Hello, hello, and welcome to the Video Call-In Show. This is our first episode ever. I'm actually doing a proof of concept here. Now, what this show is all about is giving you a platform. We've seen 100 of the interview shows where people have gone out, gotten guests, brought them in, and, interviewed them for anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple hours. Well, this is a little bit different. I'm offering that opportunity to anyone who cares to come on and talk about any subject. Is it the latest news? Is it politics? Is it some sort of property that you'd like to promote? YouTube channel, website, company? Now, I know I don't have any subscribers, and that's a problem today. Now, what I will ask you to do is subscribe as soon as you can. My plans for this channel are to be live at least once a day until such time as I can find out where my audience wants me to be. And then I'll make it a regular scheduled program. So it'll actually have a specific time that I'll start. And that's pretty exciting. But for now, I'm going to float and look for the audience. At any rate, you won't know when I start unless you do subscribe. And this is not a beg for subscribers for subscribers' sake. This is actually telling you that if you think this is worthwhile, if you even have an inkling about getting on a program where you can talk to someone face to face, not just audio in the ether like your 50s call-in show, of which there are so many, even on even on YouTube, there are a ton of call-in programs, most of which are, to me, they were uninspiring. So that's one of the reasons I decided to start this type of channel. I haven't seen it done anywhere. That too lends to its credibility in that it has potential, I believe. We've gotten to the point in technology where having this sort of thing is in most people's grasp, and but reaching the audience isn't. Now, I'm a web developer and digital marketer from way back, most of the time behind the scenes, right? I don't do sales. I do love talking to people. I'm one of the best sales wingmen that you could ask for, but what I don't do is frontline sales. Same way with being on the camera. I got to admit, I'm a little uncomfortable, but it's not something that frightens me at all. It's just, continually coming up with things to say, especially as early as we are now, in that there's no audience just yet. So anyway, if you're seeing this live, welcome. If you're watching this after it's been recorded, welcome to you. I do appreciate you joining me. If you think that this sort of thing is something that you might get on board with, by all means, hit that subscribe button and be notified. You got to hit the bell too. Be notified whenever I go live, and who knows? Maybe one of these days you'll decide to. Now, how this works is very, very simple. Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold, so bear with me. Yeah, so it's very easy. First thing that if you ever decide that you want to be on the show, visit zoom.us. Now, most people are familiar with Zoom. It's kind of like a Skype. I found that the audio and video quality can be much higher, and well, I wouldn't say higher, but it's more stable than I found Skype to be. Not only that, but the way you meet and how many people you can have involved is much greater than Skype. Dig that. So yeah, you go to the website, and then once you're there, in the upper right hand corner, you'll see a link that says "Join a meeting." That's pretty self-explanatory. Click it to join the meeting. Once you've done that, you'll be faced with a box that allows you to enter the meeting ID number. Well, you're saying, well, how am I going to do that? Simple. It's right here. You see the meeting ID? It's right there. Now, that's going to change every program, and there's a specific reason. I have a meeting line open that I could use as a solid number, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to disappoint folks, having them watch this when it's no longer live and try to join a meeting when it's no one will be there, but they'll actually be able to join a meeting. This way, it'll tell them immediately that there is no meeting happening. So that will change every single time I go live. So once you've joined, then you merely wait for me to bring you in, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. Like I said, it could be your website, it could be your YouTube channel. I see this down the road as being a fantastic venue for people who don't have the opportunity to get out there, to get their channel or their property or their website or anything that they'd like to promote. They just don't have that opportunity to get in front of a large audience. And yeah, I don't have a large audience now, but you get on the ground floor and people will be watching your video forever. And you don't have to you don't have to be any more eloquent than I am. That's easy to do. Because I'm anything but that. But I do like talking to new people. My original thought was that I was going to do like a late night talk show. And when I say talk show, kind of like a call-in show where I would talk to people and, not give advice, even though as you can tell, I've got some miles on me, but certainly sit and chew the fat. But I got to thinking about it a bit more, and it made so much more sense to actually allow people to utilize it. So it's very important that we grow this audience. And I know that sounds self-serving. I don't mean it to at all. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I can provide value. And the only way I can provide value is if I've got a subscriber base that is worthwhile. To that point, if we get enough people involved and we get enough people who want to come on and just talk, I won't even take advertising dollars. I would much rather keep it clean and entertaining, because whenever somebody comes in, you never know what you're going to be faced with. I think that adds a lot of interest to a show like this, and ads will just gum up the works. Having said that, I will be opening up perhaps a Patreon. I've already got a PayPal.me account, which I'm not throwing up just yet. It's not that important. This is not how I make my living. I decided to do this as a hobby and see where it goes. So, but I am excited about it. I think it's got potential. By all means, hit the comments and let me know whether or not you think it's got potential. And also tell me about subject matters that you'd like me to broach. Broach? Is that right? Yeah. Oh, well, we said that I've got a face for radio, a voice for print, and I can't spell. So if you hear me use words that aren't quite right, I usually catch myself. But anyway, so yeah, I think this can be fun. What do you think? Do you think I'm headed down the right road here? Let me tell you a little bit of backstory on this and why I decided to get involved and do this. I actually started out after the military in consumer electronics, thanks to my, post-high school education. And once I got out of the military and did a few years of consumer electronics repair, I found my way into local broadcast, and working as both a production staff member and engineer. And I fell in love with that, in so much as it was technology and kind of a television nut anyway, and it just made perfect sense. If I can just get rid of this cold. So anyway, it after having done that, I ended up while I was at the second television station that I worked, and I'll tell you, it was here in Indianapolis is where we're broadcasting from. Once I got out of once I left the television station, I'm sorry, let me back up. When I was at the television station, it was in the mid-'90s, and we all know what happened to the internet in the mid-'90s. Everybody had to have a website. Well, I had been playing with it as a hobby back in as early as about 91, 92. My first web page was fully text-based on trader.us, if anyone remembers that. So the image spec came down, and I was actually paid for my first web development effort ever in 1994. And looking back, it was a small amount of money, but when I adjust for inflation, it was pretty damn good. But I stayed on the station, and they came to the point where it's like, okay, now we need a website. So I developed one for the station, and I did so in such a way that it was more of a monthly magazine. So I had a team. My team and I completely revamped the entire website at least once a month, and only because even back then, when web pages like prior to frame technology, websites were so static, and people just they were just awful. And looking back, we can say that, but when we were doing it, it wasn't that way. But it was static. They were boring. All the hyperlinks were a specific color. Remember the blue, blue into purple. I don't remember what the hexadecimal code was on those, but I used to know. At any rate, we did all websites using text editor back then. So the site that I developed for the broadcast station, being that it was a monthly format, that necessitated someone to manage it on a regular basis, because now we've got to gather content, and we've got we've got code to write, and we've got images to produce, and because that was well before we could do video. In fact, I think the first this is a little side note. One of the first pieces of movement technology outside of animated GIFs was when it wasn't Future Splash. It was because we did Future Splash, which turned into Flash. But we were doing, what was it? Zoom. Oddly enough, it was a company company that had a software package called Zoom. And what Zoom allowed you to do was it allowed you to take photographs in 360 degrees. And we're all familiar with this technology now. In fact, it's all blown up into virtual reality, or with the Oculus and all the tools that you have now. Well, we were able to take all of those images, stitch them together, and then you'd have a 360-degree panorama that you were able to navigate on, in a web browser. And that was groundbreaking stuff. Groundbreaking stuff. I remember some of my earlier ones. This is before I actually had a fisheye lens camera. Was of the Hoosier Dome. Remember, I told you I'm from Indianapolis, and this is when the Hoosier Dome, the Colts were playing in the Hoosier Dome at that time. They allowed me in, and I laid down on the 50-yard line, and with this is actually with a fisheye lens, I laid down on the 50-yard line, right in the middle of the helmet, and took a few photos. At that time, I could just do 2 shots. Normally, I would do 4 because the stitching was much more smooth. But took 4 shots and then stitched those together, and it was like standing on the 50-yard line of the Hoosier Dome. I still have those images somewhere. I'd have to go look for them, but that'd be pretty cool to recreate. And then, since we have the Indianapolis 500 here in town, I was able to, of course, that was the best part about being a web developer for a television station. I became a reporter of sorts. So not only was I handling the component level engineering, but also running cameras. This is all the production side. Running cameras, running master control, running audio, running tape, running what was the other one? Well, back when we had the 2-inch machine commercial carts, doing that, doing a little bit of technical directing, operating cameras, setting up sets, lighting, all of that sort of stuff. The best part about doing the internet side was that I became a reporter as well. So I would go to the Indianapolis 500, and what would I do there as the internet director? I'd have to write. I'd have to write stories for the web. The reporters didn't know what to do yet. Most of them didn't write anyway, outside of their 10 to 15 second on-camera pieces. Sometimes a longer story, but those stories took a long time to make. And even then, the internet was pretty much do it now and get it on. And so that job was left to me. I had to write all kinds of stories, and I don't consider myself a writer, but I had to write all kinds of pieces and gather all kinds of information. We didn't have any APIs, so it wasn't like we could go and hook into the main computer and get all of the stats. Even during a race, I'm literally writing down what's on the post, right? Positions of the cars. I mean, it was hectic. Not only that, but we were also in, I think it was late 95, early 96. We were one of the first, if not the first, television station to have school closings live on our website. Now, that was all done manually by me. I got all the information from the news sources, but it was all either being emailed or brought up by paper, and I had to enter that manually for each one of the schools that closed, and I'd have it rotating. Of course, back then we could have marquees if we wanted to use marquees, or we would just have an image slideshow. It was very rudimentary. Like I said, all done in Microsoft Text or Word. You could do it in Word, but that would screw up the code. And then we moved into things like Front Page and Dreamweaver. And I'm just going through the history of web development now. At any rate, that was awesome. So I am taking the scenic route here, but we've only been on for 20 minutes. So yeah, it was so wonderful to be involved at that early stage. So anyway, after doing that for a couple of years, I decided to leave the full-time employee, the FTE world, and struck out on my own. And only because there were a couple of companies that needed my skill set in the web arena to take care of some of their needs. And I did for my own company. In fact, when I throw my PayPal.me address up here, and it won't be this show, it'll be shows down the road. This one here, like I said, is proof of concept. Hopefully we can get someone to join us here. But and it's okay if we don't. I'm going to continue to try different times. I'm self-employed, so I can actually do this during the day. Anyway, back to the story. So I leave, and I'm doing all sorts of web things for as an independent consultant for several clients all across the country, but most of them here in Indy. Buddy and I, and this is kind of a sideline as well, who both left at the same time, or were doing it as consultants, decided to put together a business. We did, and that's another story for another time. But anyway, so I've been doing that ever since. Started out, like I said, with web development at text level. Moved more since I think my creative side was the guy that I went into business with. He was more of a hard coder, so he knew the C, the Perl, the CGI, and .NET later on. He knew all of those. I didn't ever get into that, but I had a creative side. So and fortunately that worked out very well at the television station too. So what I did was I headed up the design side of that, and most of my internet career between the station, which was I probably left in about 98, and then I went on to like I said, I was doing a whole lot of UI and UX, which is user interface and user experience. I'll never forget. Well, I'll get back to that. Anyway, so I did the graphics side of it, right? The design. We used to just refer to it as web design at that point, and really enjoyed it. I haven't counted all the websites that I've created, but it's got to be near 200, I guess. I don't know if that's a very high number. It doesn't sound very high, but when you think of creating an entire interface for a website, whether or not that gets manually populated, or something like a WordPress where you do it on the top level and it filters down to each of the pages that are created, that's a lot of websites. So anyway, now if I can just remember where I was going with all that. Oh yeah, so I migrated from text level and graphics to UX and UI, and in about 2004, when it was about time that everyone was getting into search engine marketing, I did as well. It was 2004 to 2006, somewhere in there. And I found that I really enjoyed battling with the unknown. We all know how secretive that the search engines can be with their algorithms. And I became fascinated in having the ability to optimize a site in such a way that it would command the search engine results pages, the SERPs, based on several different keywords and keyword phrases directly related to that website. So I got into that very heavily and did a lot of SEO. Same thing with SEM. I started working with AdWords when it first started, and really enjoyed that. But oh, hang on there just a second. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. But it got to the point where you just kind of get burned out sometimes, and I was ready to move on. So just about 3 years ago, I was working with a firm. They were a digital marketing firm, but they also developed websites, and I wasn't into the website side of that at all. I was doing a little app development for them because I'd gotten into that and started enjoying it. And they asked me, because they had been doing an audio podcast, recording an audio podcast to one of the local radio stations. Now, of course, if any of you've been in a radio station, you'll know that it's not all glamour and glitz. They're really put together pretty crappy. I'm constantly amazed whenever I walk into it into a radio station how poorly it's been put together. This one in particular that they were doing this audio podcast on, which they'd been doing for about 4 years. This one had horse blankets up on the hanging from the walls as their sound attenuation. And yeah, it absorbed sound, but it wasn't a nice place to be and try to be creative. And whenever you're doing something like this, it's all about being creative. So they the firm that I was working with wanted to move downtown Indianapolis, and they wanted to bring it in-house, right? So they didn't want to have to pay that radio station any longer to record that show. It was a once a week show, and then there was travel time. I mean, it got pretty expensive. So the owner asked me to build, or if I, there's a side story to this as well. The first floor of the building that we were going to inhabit wasn't finished out yet. So, and the owner was trying to work with the general contractor that the owner worked with for the second floor. Turns out this guy stopped paying his subs, and so then we were left in a lurch. And I was after doing the app development for this firm, I started doing a lot of search engine marketing for all the clients on the digital marketing side. They didn't have anybody else to do it. They were outsourcing it. Brought it in-house to me, and but then I was asked once we figured out that general contractor was flaking out if I knew of any general contractors, and I said, "Well, listen, why don't we try to?" Well, I need to go back again because the general contractor that we talked to before we found out he wasn't paying his subs, we had many discussions about this studio that he wanted to build in this location, and he just wasn't getting it. He just was not getting it. Well, since I have some electronic background, I was the one actually trying to help this contractor understand what it was that we were trying to build. And I wanted a specific sound attenuation level in that room. And you know how office buildings are; they're built with the suspended ceilings, and they're open on either side, so you can hear somebody 2 rooms down if they fart and laugh about it. You're going to know 100 feet away. So what needed to be done was, the floors needed to be built up to the deck. They needed to be insulated. The windows, which the owner of the company wanted very large display windows, so that people could actually see when a recording is being done. And it was just going to be audio at first. I'll let you know what that means in a minute. So as I was talking to the GC, the owner looked at me and says, after we found out he wasn't paying his subs, he looked at me and said, "Can't you do this?" I said, "Well, yeah, I can." I said, I can't call myself a general contractor because that takes a license, but I can be a general coordinator. See what I did there? And for the next 6 months, 2 months was actually getting the lower level inhabitable for all the other digital marketers, and then another 2 or 3 months to finish out the studio, most of which I did by hand, and I was very, very proud of that studio. I still am. I honestly, I'm going to lay it down to you. I wish I was still there. I thought, well, I'll get into that in a minute. So anyway, yeah, so this studio was awesome. It was started out as a solid room, roughly 12 by 15, and we cut it in almost third, 2/3. 2/3 for the studio, 1/3 for the production or control room. And behind that, I had a small closet that I was going to turn into a VO booth, which didn't come to fruition. It turned out to be storage for the longest time, and probably is still storage today because I don't think anybody there could continue what I did. So yeah, it was wonderful. I thought all the two windows, the control room to the studio window was 8x4. The viewing window, which had a small foyer out front. I'm not going to mention the name of this studio just yet. Maybe down the road I will, one of these other shows. So the am I public? Will somebody please chat and let me know I'm public? It says public. Okay. So yeah, the window that was the display window, that thing was it was 8 foot wide, but we had to go shorter, so it was probably about 3.5, 375. I don't remember. But and then both were, well, the display window was double pane. I had a 3-inch gap in between, 4.5-inch wall, and I laid hardwood all the way around it. They were the windows were isolated from the hardwood. The gap, actually, I routed out the top stop plate for the desiccant, the silicon moisture absorber, and then I even put fire closers on the doors. And I had 2 doors, one from the control room into the studio, one from the control room out into that foyer I was telling you about. and that gave me a double window between the studio and on that side, because the owner had to have doors, full glass doors that matched other doors in the facility, and that's fine. So that's how I got around with that. So I had fire stops on those, and they're automatic closers that would seal down at the bottom. And of course, each one of the commercial knockdown door frames, I had sealant all the way around there, so it was airtight. I did an STC sound check on it, and initially it was, I would run pink noise on the outside and record it on the inside, and it was ugly. It was like starting out. And this is all from memory, but I want to say that it averaged an STC of about. This is when the walls were built all the way to the deck, so it's going to be better than most. I think a 4.5-inch wall will be about 43, and then when I got done, those suckers were way up there. I mean, it was just awesome. I don't remember what the numbers were, but I think I doubled it once I insulated the walls and once I sealed off and got the windows installed. Yeah, I want to say it was probably, no, it wasn't doubled. It was probably in the probably 50% range. So I've got the numbers written down somewhere, and it's been almost 2 years since I measured it. But anyway, I also created it in such a way that that each one of the sound panels within the studio was strung with LED lights as an individual DMX channel. So I'm not individual DMX, but a individual 3-channel DMX. Each one of those went up to a controller, and DMX into the control room, so I could take a PC and run a light program, and I could change any one of those panels, of which I think there were 16. Most of them 2 foot wide, a couple of them 1 foot wide for space. And I could change any color I wanted to. The background was just about the same gray as you see this, not quite as much blue in it, but almost the same gray. I tried to make it as neutral as possible so that we could change the background color based on whatever client may come in there and want to do video. And that, like I said, the video portion of the program. Boy, I'm just rambling now, aren't I? But the video portion of the program happened during construction. Suddenly it was like, hey, we should do video in here. That's when I decided to install those panels and lights, because I didn't want, like if I brought a client in here, sat him in this chair, you go, well, shit, that's that's the video call-in show set. Didn't want that. So I wanted it to look unique for each one. In fact, I had plans for a full 360-degree curtain rail that I could throw chroma key curtains up, any other colors, any banners that were corporate specific. I was trying to make it as versatile as possible. All right, long story long, one of the things that I built into that studio that, again, is what I would consider unique, if nothing else, if not the first, was the ability to pull all of the electronics were in a flight case with casters. So you can pop that away from the studio itself and take it out to the field. So you pack up your cameras, you pack up your pack up all of your audio equipment and microphones and whatnot, and you can go on location, and you can record any type of event, program, conference, concert, you name it, all with what I coined as a pop-up studio. So, you had everything you needed, and everything was switched on a very powerful laptop. There might be one or two more PC or other laptops controlling things like digital mixer, and hell, it even had an amp in it. And the reason I used an amp in the studio was for the speakers. I had fold-back speakers that I could, you'd record something and I could play it back. I could actually play it on the monitor right there in the studio, and they can see what they just recorded and hear it through some very high fidelity speakers, which I built myself. And we'll get into that later too. But I was so proud of that studio. I'd literally created a what I thought was an environment I was going to spend the rest of my working days in. We were producing several different shows, 2 of them in-house, and then several for clients. Not nearly enough though. But alas, things changed. It turns out it was pretty difficult to sell, and I get that. I mean, it's not easy to and I'll tell you exactly how I know this. It's not easy to help people understand, what value that video content can be to their business, and it's really perplexing. It took me right back to my early days of web development, and really where I found out that I wasn't much of a salesman, in that it was really hard to help or to convince people why their business needed a website. I'm not talking about individuals. Individuals have never really needed websites unless there was some sort of goal that they hope to attain by having them. And when I say that, it could be, all of our goals are different. But for them, it could be, contact in the days before Facebook, even before MySpace or GeoCities. It could just be one of those things where they have to have it for contact, or they it's like an announcement spot. That would have been the early stages of Facebook, or I should say versions. Anyway, it's a real hard sell back then to help them understand that their outward appearance is everything. Not only that, but their ability to adopt new technology positions them as a leader in their industry. And I don't care who it is. It could be a plumber, for cripe's sake. If you're on the edge and you're moving, and it's not costing you a lot. So it's not like you've got a Lamborghini and your customers know that they're paying for that. No, it's like, okay, they get it, man. They're trying to make my life easier, and in doing so, I'm going to appreciate and patronize them. So Think about that when you think about this channel, because it's very, very similar to that, in that I really want to help people move forward when it comes to getting the word out about whatever it is they're excited about. Anyway, back to the story. So, so I found it a real hard sell, and they found it a real hard sell on the studio. You know, it was it's just not that easy to convince people that they need to create video content, even in the face of some of the greatest stats in the world. And when I say, or I should say, not stats, but here, let me give you an example. I saw a statistic the other day that said, or I should say the other year, that said that an email with a video embedded in it is 300 times more likely to convert than, like say, a sales email without. Now, to me, that's staggering. That is staggering. Unless, of course, that 300% brings you up to 0.002. But that's not the case at all. I think email conversion rate, and, you know, smack me on this, but I think email conversion rate is probably in the neighborhood of 3 to 5%. So if you can increase that by 300%, you're killing it, right? Depending on how many emails you're sending out. If it's 2 or 3, you're not doing much of anything. So yeah, it was a tough sell, and I had to leave that studio, and it was one of the saddest things I've ever had to do. You put that much blood, sweat, and tears into something like that, and you know, you feel like, I mean, it's just sad. And of course, you know, they're still plodding along. They're not doing what I would consider. They're not banging it. They're just plodding along. So, you know, more power to them. More power to them. But anyway, so let's backtrack a little bit. I built the studio so that we could literally pull pieces of it out, take it on the road. Well, in the early days, I didn't want to have to do that as studio operations director. I didn't want to have to tear apart the studio and then have to put it back together, and that turned out to be prophetic as well, because we ended up having shows booked really close to one another. So there was no way to get back to the studio, put her all together, and then get a show off in like a half an hour to an hour. Just couldn't do it. So me being the gear slut that I am, I had very much the same equipment that was in the studio that I've been using for, you know, my bands and whatnot. The only thing I had to add to that was the smart switch, because all of my cameras, they're all PoE, which is power over Ethernet, and I need a smart switch because I didn't want them to be on the same network as the venue that I was going to be recording. So I bought one of those, and I still have it to this day. And I'll tell you why I have it to this day. When I left the studio, again, I didn't want to leave the studio, but when I was asked to, for lack of a better term, reduce my hours, I could see the writing on the wall, and it was killing me watching what I'd built die. So I just left. I just told him, I said, I can't do it. I wish all the luck in the world, but I can't watch this thing die. So I left, and and it immediately occurred to me that I still love doing it, but it immediately occurred to me that that 60%, maybe more than that, probably closer to the order of 70% of the equipment that we were actually using on the road was mine. All the equipment that I purchased for, you know, running audio for my bands and things like that was perfect for those live streams. All we had to do is pull the cameras out of the studio, go. my box, right? My flight case. So I obviously had my flight case with me when I left, and all I had to do was add. I literally only had to add cameras, and some cables, and I was ready to go because I'd patterned the studio box on mine, at least from an audio perspective. The video became easy. Well, okay. I had to buy a camera and a better laptop because the laptops that I had were not up to snuff, if you will. So that's exactly what I did. I should take some time here to introduce people who may be watching this later on. But I'm Jim, and this is the video call-in show, the show where you get to call in. You get to join teleconference in, I should say. You get to teleconference in. I will put you live on the air, and you can talk about anything your heart desire. How this works, you visit zoom.us. On zoom.us, you'll see a button up top that says join a meeting. Click on that. It'll ask you for a meeting ID. You can get the meeting ID from the number right here at the bottom of the screen, which again will change every single show. And I've gone over this before, but I'll go over it again. It's going to change. I could use my standard meeting ID number, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want anyone to be disappointed if they jump in later when this is a static video and they just want to watch the content. And be disappointed because it'll sit there with them waiting for someone to come on. If they try to use one of these numbers, then it'll tell them that there's no meaning there. It's kind of like the Jenny scenario, right? So I think what they did, didn't they buy a number? Didn't they buy one of the 867 number and or was that? Well, they did, but they didn't get enough area codes, if memory serves. No biggie. So anyway, you join the meeting that way, and and then you wait for me to bring you on. You don't have to come on with video. Leave your camera off if you want to. I encourage you to come on with video. I mean, it's so much nicer to talk face to face, but you don't have to. I'm not gonna force that issue. At any rate, come on in. Talk about just about anything. Doesn't matter to me. We'll chew the fat. We'll promote your website. We'll talk about your YouTube channel. Everybody wants to do that. I mean, the idea behind this site is to give exposure to those people who don't normally get exposure, and the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if this channel gets exposure. So I'm kind of depending on you. I'm going to do a lot of work myself to get my name out, but I'm depending on you to like and subscribe like everyone else does. And I know it sounds like a beg. I don't mean it to sound like a beg, but if you like and subscribe, tell your friends about it, post it to other video channels. When you're adding relevant content, don't just spam video channels with my link. And then come back and join the show. The one thing is nice is if you get on and we talk about what you want to talk about, we promote what you want to promote, or we just chew the fat, that will live. And I will take clips of that, and one, I can send you a clean clip if that's where we're going. Because I'm going to try to make clean clips when you're here. So in other words, if you wanted to promote your YouTube channel or something, we go straight to your YouTube channel. I would pull you full screen. So, for me, that's very easy to do. Pull you full screen, throw in a lower third, which I don't have my lower thirds built yet. Shame on me. And that video clip becomes a promotional clip that you can use when you're talking about those things that you're passionate about. Anywhere you'd like to do it. I have no compunction about of hanging on to the content exclusively. I want this to be of value to you, the viewer, and And I think I'm really excited about it. I'm really hoping to get a whole lot of folks involved here. So anyway, where was I? Back to the story. Excuse me. Oh, it's getting late. Might have to. Yep. Good night. All right. So I had all this equipment from the live shots that we were doing at the studio. I added new camera, full pan tilt zoom cameras that I can control from the switching PC, which is always going to be my main laptop. This is exactly what I'm doing now. When you see me look down and maybe throw something else in, that's all done on a live switcher, right? So, and that little movie running in the background here on how to join is merely a movie that's on another layer. So, little video clip. But yeah, that's I would do that for clients. Do all the pre-pro up front, and start my own business doing it. So that's really what I do for a living. It's very much like what I'm doing here. But I also, for clients, put together shows like this. Now, they're not going to be an open forum. It's not going to be, the video calling show for them. They're literally going to have scheduled guests that'll come on, but they could be anywhere in the country. I can switch them right here in Indianapolis, live stream them to any venue that I want to, and that's turned out to be some, a good time. I mean, I really enjoy doing it, like I said. So that's my story. That's my story. We've been live here. This is the second time I've been live tonight. The first one, it looked like I'd only been live for about 28 minutes, and it cut me off for some reason. It told me it wasn't available anymore, and I'm like, what? My stream hasn't stopped? But I think that I've got some streaming issues. I don't understand why the stream health is floating yellow. And I think I'm locked into private anyway. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It is what it is. So, if you're watching live, again, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching this at home after it's been recorded, well, I should say, let me start that again. If you're watching us live, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. If you're watching us after it's been recorded, thank you as well. I encourage every one of you to subscribe. We need numbers if we're going to be able to reach the type of audience that I and you want to reach. We need numbers. So like and subscribe the videos. Click the bell notifications so you know when I go live, and you can jump in and either jump in and watch or join in live. I prefer you to jump in live, but I appreciate anyone who watches. You got to have watchers to make it worthwhile. So thanks again. And listen, I think what I'm going to do is sign off now. Yep, we've been on the air for about 53 minutes. And it's past midnight here in Eastern Standard Time.